A singer known for her hit song about not wanting to go to rehab died from consuming too much alcohol, according to a British coroner.
My life is, I'm a drug addict. I'm a person that if I have a drink, I can't stop.
You know that glass of wine you're having with dinner or that beer after work? Here's something most people won't tell you. Even just 1 or 2 drinks per day is literally shrinking your brain. Because what science and medicine has discovered about alcohol in recent years is absolutely mind-blowing and terrifying. Today, we're diving deep into what alcohol actually does to the body, the brain, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll never look at that cocktail the same way again. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Amy and I put out medical content online in hopes of combating misinformation. But before we jump in, I want to be clear about today's video. This isn't a video to shame anyone who drinks. I'm not standing here on some moral high ground. I personally drink socially. Many people I know around me drink socially. This video is about understanding the science so you can make informed decisions about your own health and your own drinking, not a judgmental video. And here's the thing. We're gonna make this actually understandable, not just confusing. You don't need a PhD to understand this, just straight talk, real talk, and I'll try to break down what's happening and hopefully we can all learn and grow healthier with this video. So grab your water and let's get into it. All right, you guys, let's start with the basics. When we talk about alcohol in drinks, we're actually talking about something called ethanol. There's 3 types of alcohol that occur in nature: isopropyl alcohol, and that's rubbing alcohol for example, if you have a wound to clean it and stuff like that. Methyl alcohol, extremely toxic, leads to blindness, comas, really one of the worst things you can ingest for the human body. And ethanol, which is the one that we supposedly say is safe for human consumption. And I say supposedly because here's the first uncomfortable fact. Ethanol is still toxic to your body. Yes, even the alcohol in your fancy cocktails or expensive whiskey is technically a poison, a toxin. Your body recognizes it as a poison, which is why it immediately goes to work trying to break it down and get rid of it. So let's talk about how that works. When you drink alcohol, it goes into first, obviously, your stomach and then your liver. Your liver, recognizing it as a toxic, has this urgent job of converting the ethanol into something less toxic. First, it becomes something called acetaldehyde, which is actually more toxic than alcohol itself, and then quickly into acetate, which your body can handle better. And a small part of this acetate is excreted by the kidneys, but the rest is transformed into something called acetyl-CoA, which you don't need to know this, but it enters specific metabolic cycles in the body, like the Krebs cycle, etc. And basically, it's used for energy by several organs: the liver, the brain, the heart, and so on. But a super interesting fact about alcohol is that alcohol is both water and fat soluble. So it means that it is both hydrophilic and lipophilic, which in simple terms means that it can basically pass through every cell membrane in your body. Your brain has this protective barrier called the blood-brain barrier that keeps most substances out, like toxins, waste products, unwanted metabolites. But since alcohol is both fat as well as water soluble, just walks right in like it owns the place, right? There's nothing to stop it from entering. An important other fact is that alcohol is what we call empty calories. Your body burns a ton of energies trying to process it and get rid of it and convert it from one metabolite to another, but you get absolutely zero nutritional benefit from it. Not a single vitamin, mineral, or any useful nutrient. It's literally just your body working overtime to deal with getting rid of a toxin or a toxic in the situation. So if you think about it, being drunk is kind of like your brain being disrupted by poison. That warm, fuzzy, happy feeling, that's basically cellular damage. So now that we know what alcohol basically is, a poison. I'm sorry that I have to keep hammering that point in, but it just feels like in society now people have forgotten that it is a toxin. Alcohol is a poison. Let's talk about what it does to your brain once it enters and bypasses the blood-brain barrier. the first thing alcohol does is suppress something called your prefrontal cortex. And I believe this was a research conducted by Dr. Andrew Huberman, a brilliant neuroscientist, I believe. I think he works at Stanford University still. I'm not sure, but he used to back in the day before. He has an amazing podcast. And I think he's one of the best neuroscientists of our generation, if you ask me. Um, but, to each its own. And what they theorized in this neurological study of alcohol consumption and what it does to the brain is that the first thing that gets shut down is your prefrontal cortex, like I said. So this is the part of your brain that's right behind your forehead, and it's responsible for a lot of important things like planning, decision making, impulse control. And you know what people say, alcohol lowers your inhibition. And this is exactly why. Your brain's control mechanism has basically fallen asleep on the job. So all those wild ideas that normally get vetoed before you even try to execute them, they're getting straight through security now. This is why drunk texting your exes is a thing on an alcohol-fueled, emotional, vulnerable night. But it gets deeper. Alcohol absolutely demolishes your ability to form new memories. The hippocampus, your brain's memory formation center, it sits somewhere in neurology. We say that it sits in what we call the medial temporal lobe on both sides. So you have two hippocampuses. And just like the prefrontal cortex, it gets suppressed. This is why you forget things when you drink. And in extreme cases, this is what causes those blackout drunk episodes where people literally cannot remember entire chunks of their nights. And we all know how dangerous this can get. So now let's talk a little bit about the different type of drinkers. There are two types of drinkers. So let's call them type 1 for the first one. And these are your people who have a couple of drinks and then they start to feel sleepy, relax, and they just naturally tap out after 2-3 drinks max, right? And now let's talk about type 2 drinkers. These people who are considered the type 2 drinkers, how do I put this? They consume a couple of drinks and feel more energized, more awake, more ready to party. So these are your let's keep it going all night people, right? When they drink. And if you are drinker type 2, or if you do tend to follow that pattern, I have some bad news for you. You might be genetically predisposed to alcoholism or alcohol misuse syndrome. Your brain is literally wired differently, and alcohol affects your serotonin and dopamine systems in ways that you want more rather than making you want to wind down. And this isn't a moral failing on your behalf or being weak, it's biology. Some people with this genetic predisposition cannot stop alcohol once they start consuming it. And it's crucial information for you to have about yourself, because understanding that if you belong to this type 2 group of people, you cannot help it. And if it's already gotten out of hand and you're already in a loop of unhealthy alcohol consumption, please contact your primary care physician, the psychiatry department at the nearest hospital, a rehab, or an addiction center, because there's plenty of help. You don't need to suffer alone and in silence. It's what doctors are here for, is to help in these horrendous situations, right? So now that we've discussed the basics of what alcohol is and what it does to the body, the brain, we need to have a semi-serious conversation. A sobering conversation, pun intended. For years, scientists and doctors knew that heavy drinking, which back in the day I believe was considered to be between 12 to 24 drinks per week, absolutely causes brain degeneration. Your brain literally shrinks, particularly the neocortex. The neocortex is basically the new part of the brain. So not the cerebellum, not the midbrain, but the frontal part of your brain. As recent studies have dropped a new bombshell, even low to moderate drinking can cause brain damage. We're talking about 7 to 14 drinks per week. That's literally 1 to 2 drinks per day. Studies using brain imaging have shown that this level of drinking is associated with thinning of the neocortex and reduction in both gray and white matter in the brain. So literally your brain is shrinking. In medicine, alcohol consumption is usually measured in either grams of pure alcohol or grams of pure ethanol or standard drinks or alcohol units. So since most of us cannot extract the amount of pure alcohol or pure ethanol from the alcohol beverage, clinically, most doctors use the quick clinical rule, which is that 1 glass of beer is about 33 centiliters and is one glass of wine and one shot of spirit is considered one standard drink. And of course, different countries define units differently, but the principle is the same, estimating how much pure ethanol a person consumes, right? And let me be crystal clear. Your brain is physically getting smaller when you drink regularly, even at low or moderate levels. But there is a tiny bit of good news. For casual drinkers or social drinkers, a lot of this damage is reversible. If you stop drinking, your brain can recover quite a bit after 2 to 6 months. Your neural circuits can actually restructure back towards their original state. However, and this is very important, chronic heavy drinkers may experience some permanent changes. The earlier you start drinking in life, the worse it gets. And here's another critical finding. People who start drinking between the ages of 13 to 15 are much more likely to develop alcohol dependence, regardless of whether alcoholism runs in their family, if they are genetically predisposed or not. But if you delay drinking until around the age of 21, your risk drops dramatically, even if you do have a family history of alcoholism. The developing brain, as you can imagine, is extremely vulnerable to alcohol's effects. This is why teenage drinking is a horrific idea from a neurological standpoint. So now let's talk about why alcohol makes you feel good at first. And it all comes down to the brain's chemistry, specifically serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, very crucial neurotransmitter, involved in mood regulation, self-image, how you perceive yourself and the world. So when you first start drinking alcohol, it causes a temporary boost in your serotonin. This is what increases or creates that initial feeling of euphoria, sociability, and general good vibes, right? But unfortunately, this sudden increase in serotonin is very temporary, and it comes at a very high cost. As your body metabolizes the alcohol into acetaldehyde, your serotonin levels come crashing down. This is why most people feel more anxious, more depressed, more stressed the day after drinking. Henceforth, the term anxiety. And even if they don't have a full-blown hangover, they still feel much worse than actually if they went to sleep without having a drink. And here's where it gets even worse. Chronic alcohol use actually changes your baseline stress levels. People who drink regularly, even just one drink per night, experience increases in cortisol, which is your body's main stress hormone. And this doesn't just happen while you're drinking. Your baseline cortisol levels go up even when you're not drinking. So you end up feeling more stressed, more anxious in your everyday life, which then creates more desire to drink more, to feel better. And that leads to you drinking more and increasing your stress levels more. So you can see how a lot of people end up in this vicious cycle. Your body's literally becoming more stressed at baseline because of your drinking habit. And to suppress that stress, you're basically drinking more. Now let's talk about something most people don't know or don't realize. Your gut, your liver, and your brain are in constant communication with one another. There's actually a direct nerve that goes all the way from your central nervous system to your gut, to your liver, and back. And this is called the vagus nerve, or the 10th cranial nerve. It has a lot of functions in the body, the 10th cranial nerve. We won't go into every detail, but in alcohol, it connects the gut, the liver, and the brain. When you drink alcohol, you're not just affecting your brain, you're setting off a chain reaction throughout this entire system. And I mean the gut, liver, brain axis. First, alcohol indiscriminately kills bacteria in your gut, which means that it kills the good bacteria along with the bad bacteria. So your gut microbiome, which is crucial for everything from digestion to mood to immune function, gets absolutely wrecked by regular alcohol consumption. And this can lead to something very common called the leaky gut syndrome, where the lining of your intestines becomes much more permeable and allows things that shouldn't get into your bloodstream to pass through. Second, your liver, which is working overtime to metabolize all this alcohol, starts releasing inflammatory molecules called cytokines. This creates inflammation not just in your liver, but throughout the entire body, including your brain. And here's the twisted part. This inflammation actually increases your desire to drink more alcohol. The disruption to your neural circuits and the inflammatory response creates a biochemical environment that makes you crave more of the thing that's causing the problem. But here's a bit of good news. You can help prepare your gut microbiome by consuming low sugar fermented foods like sauerkraut, yogurt, probiotics, kefir. I know that's very popular in some countries. I love it personally, but not because I have a leaky gut, but just because I want to help my gut microbiome. And you can maybe aim to have about 2 to 4 servings per week, and it can help reduce those inflammatory signals and support your recovery, of course. All right, now let's talk about hangovers. We've all been there. Well, most of us have. And they're absolutely miserable. But what's actually happening? A hangover is basically a multi-system failure caused by alcohol's toxic effects, of course. So let's try to break them all down one by one. The number one cause of hangovers is, of course, sleep disruption. Even one drink disrupts your sleep. Alcohol might help you fall asleep faster, but the quality of the sleep is horrendous. Your brain doesn't go through its normal sleep cycles properly. And your normal sleep cycles are basically your REM and non-REM sleep that keep repeating 4 to 6 times per night, each lasting from about an hour and a half to 2 hours. The second thing that causes dehydration, that most people are aware of, actually, to my surprise, is the dehydration aspect of it all. Alcohol is a diuretic, meaning that it makes you pee more. You're losing not just water, but crucial electrolytes like sodium, potassium, magnesium. And that's a big part of the headache and the fatigue, of course. The gut microbiome disruption. We just talked about this. Your gut bacteria are basically decimated, contributing to nausea and digestive issues. The other thing that most people might not be aware of that causes hangovers are vasodilation followed by vasoconstriction. So while you're drinking, alcohol causes your blood vessels to expand, and that's called vasodilation. And when the alcohol wears off, they constrict, which causes those pounding headaches because your vessels basically go from being fully dilated to constricted. So less blood flow to the brain, more headaches. Another one is the blood sugar crashes that it causes. Alcohol metabolism, of course, interferes with your blood sugar regulation, leading to those feelings of weakness, irritability that come along with a low blood sugar. So let's talk about a few practical advices for dealing with hangovers, if you will. The number one advice I would give is actually drinking water and electrolytes. This is crucial. So if you drink 1 to 2 glasses of water for every alcoholic beverage you consume, and make sure you're getting electrolytes along with it, not just plain water, you have a higher chance of mitigating those hangover symptoms. But be careful with pain medications as well the next day after a hangover, because your liver is already working overtime to process the alcohol. So taking NSAIDs, so non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen, paracetamol, can add additional stress to your liver. And most people usually just pop a paracetamol or an ibuprofen to get rid of the hangover, but really you're putting more stress on the liver. And also, when it comes to hangovers, the type of alcohol also matters. Different alcohols contain different amounts of something called congeners. These are the chemicals that form during the fermentation process of the alcohol and add flavor and color to it. And the more congeners you have, the worse the hangovers are. So there is a list that I believe you can pull up somewhere online of what causes the most hangovers to the least hangovers. But I believe things like beer, vodka, and gin, they have less congeners, so lead to milder hangover symptoms. And things like whiskey, rum, red wine, brandy, they basically unleash the hangover demons on you the entire day and sometimes several days. So those would be the worst alcohols to consume if you really don't want to have a hangover. And the hard truth, you guys, there is no magic cure for hangovers. The just drink one more beverage to not get hungover that I've heard many people say before is absolute complete BS. It might temporarily make you feel better, but you're just delaying and worsening the inevitable crash. So now I would like to talk about something that's slightly more depressing, and it is the correlation between alcohol and cancer risk. And this might be the most sobering part of the whole video. We need to talk about alcohol and cancer, and especially if you're a woman, come to the front of the screen, open up those ear canals, because what I'm about to tell you is very shocking. The research here is clear and really bad. Alcohol significantly increases your risk of cancer. And we're talking about breast cancer, liver cancer, esophageal cancer, throat cancer, colon cancer, you name it. But as I said earlier, for women specifically, the breast cancer risk is particularly well documented. For every 10 grams of alcohol consumed per day, so guys, ladies, that is less than one standard drink, so less than 1 glass of wine per day, The risk of you having breast cancer jumps from 0 to 4 to 13%. So if you're a non-drinker woman, you might have a zero risk of breast cancer development. But if you drink at least one drink per every night, your chances of getting breast cancer can jump to up to 13%. So how does this even happen? Alcohol basically does two very nasty things. It suppresses the molecules that normally inhibit tumor growth, so your body's natural cancer defenses are weakened. There's also an effect on DNA methylation. Basically, alcohol can change how your genes are expressed, increasing the likelihood of cancerogenic mutations. Some people will say, what about taking folate and B vitamins to offset this? Yes, there is evidence that these nutrients might slightly reduce the DNA damage from alcohol, but let's be very clear, guys, they don't offset the cancer risk. They might reduce it slightly, but they certainly don't eliminate it. And it's a very horrible misconception that I've come across online. The comparison that really puts this in perspective, one study suggested that the cancer risk from one alcoholic drink is roughly equivalent to smoking 10 cigarettes. And even if that was overestimated in that study, you guys, and it's actually equivalent to 5 cigarettes or even a 1-to-1 ratio, that's still a massive deal. So now that I've terrified the ladies who like to have a couple of glasses of wine or champagne every day, let's talk about something that affects both men and women. Hormones. Alcohol promotes something called aromatization. And this is where testosterone gets converted into estrogen in the body. This happens both in men and women, but the effects of this are particularly noticeable more in men. For men, regular alcohol consumption leads to things like increased estrogen levels, decreased testosterone levels over time, potential gynecomastia, so abnormal breast tissue development for men, reduced sex drive or libido, increased fat storage, specifically around the midsection or the abdomen, which is the worst kind of fat storage. For women, the estrogen increase from alcohol can contribute to things like hormonal imbalances, increased breast risk cancer, like I just said earlier, of course, mood disruptions, and changes in fat distribution, of course. And before someone brings up the studies showing that acute testosterone increase right after drinking, yes, those studies exist, but they're measuring immediate temporary effects. The long-term effect of chronic alcohol consumption is a decrease in testosterone, not an increase. Your hormonal system is incredibly delicate and finely tuned, actually. Most people don't realize this. And regular alcohol consumption throws like a wrench into that work. So now let's talk a little bit about if there is any safe amount to drink or not. And I believe this is the question that everyone wants answered. Is there a safe amount of alcohol to drink? For years, we've heard about the supposed health benefits of moderate drinking or that red wine has antioxidants and is healthy for the heart, the Mediterranean diet with a glass of wine at dinner, blah, blah, blah. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Those studies were flawed. More recent and better designed research has pretty much demolished the idea that there's any health benefit to drinking alcohol at all. The cardiovascular benefits that were once reported, they appear to be more about the lifestyle of moderate drinkers who tend to be wealthier, have better healthcare, access to exercise and more, rather than the alcohol itself. So people who consumed heavier alcohols like spirits who were cheaper and who didn't have access to exercise, who weren't healthy, who didn't have good healthcare, they had no benefits from drinking alcohol. The resveratrol in red wine that was supposed to be so beneficial back in the day, you need to drink about an absurd amount of it to get any therapeutic levels, way more than anybody should consume, right? So really, this whole false narrative of alcohol being beneficial in some health aspects is completely BS, you guys. And when you look at the actual science without the confounding factors, the conclusion is pretty clear. The healthy amount of alcohol to consume is 0. Now, if you do choose to drink alcohol, the research suggests that the threshold where negative health effects really start to pile on are at about 2 drinks per week. Not per day, guys, per week. So now let's talk about a group of people that most people tend to never take into consideration. So young people and pregnant women. For pregnant women or during pregnancy, the message here is crystal clear. Do not drink any alcohol while pregnant, ladies, please. Period. Full stop. End of discussion. I don't need to explain any more further. But if you want the explanation, here it is. Alcohol is a mutagen. It can cause genetic mutations and developmental abnormalities in the fetus. The risk of having fetal alcohol syndrome is very real. And here's the scary part. We don't know what the safe threshold is because there probably isn't one. Any amount of alcohol during pregnancy can potentially cause harm to the developing baby, particularly the baby's brain, which is incredibly plastic and vulnerable during development. So please, ladies, if you're pregnant, for the love of God, don't drink alcohol. For young people, we touched this about a bit earlier, but it appears that the earlier you start drinking, the higher risk of developing alcohol dependence you have in your life later on. People who start drinking between the ages of 13 to 15, I believe, have a higher significant risk of developing problematic relationships with alcohol later on, regardless of family history. So if you're able to delay your drinking until your early 20s, when your brain is more developed, your risks drops dramatically. So parents, this is crucial information. Talk to your teenagers about this. It's not about being uncool or unrealistic. It's about brain development and long-term health. They will thank you when they get older. All right, guys, we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's bring it home. I know this video has been pretty heavy on the alcohol is bad messaging, and I want to reiterate, this isn't about judgment. This isn't about having a judgmental look upon people who consume alcohol. This is about having accurate information so you can make informed decisions about your own health. And the bottom line I want everybody to take from this video is a toxic substance that your body treats as a poison. Even moderate amounts can cause brain changes, increase stress hormones, disrupt your gut health, increase risk cancer, messes with your hormones, and impairs your sleep quality. The idea that there is a safe or healthy amount of alcohol, the science just doesn't support this anymore. The healthiest amount, you guys, I'm sorry to tell you if you're a drinker, is 0. But the most important thing is that we live in the real world. If you choose to drink, understanding what it actually does to your body can help you make better choices. So what would these better choices be? Keep it to 2 to 3 drinks per week, less if possible. Stay hydrated with water and electrolytes. Support your gut microbiome with fermented foods. Don't drink during pregnancy, please. And delay drinking as long as possible if you're young. And be honest whether you might be genetically predisposed to alcohol use or not. Don't be in denial. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is making informed decisions that align with your health goals. If this video has made you rethink your relationship with alcohol, that's not bad, you guys. It might be a good thing. Your brain and body will thank you later. If you found this helpful, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into health science that actually matters. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear more thoughts from you guys. And remember, your health is your most valuable asset. Please protect it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one.